name's Steve Bowles. I have a piece of property in Rumney, and this is the view from the top. It's 85 acres. I bought it about a year and a half ago, and it's my transition from being in the suburbs for 20 years. I'm hoping to eventually transition to this property. DAcres is probably right about here. This is looking west, so. But that's kind of the big picture of looking out from the property. This is an 8-acre field down here, so this is really what I'm focusing on. There's a lot to understand the property and to kind of determine what I can do with it, but I'm really going to just stick with the initial 8 acres to see how I can apply the concepts I've learned here and move forward with it. So as far as some of the principles that I've tried to apply, I've kind of read a lot of books about the subject and certainly learned a lot from the course, and I've picked out some key items that seem to apply to this property and what I'm focused on. Observing natural systems and design for specific site characteristics, connecting each design element in a way that provides benefit for all the components. Low impact renewable systems. For some of you that don't know me, I'm an energy consultant, so focusing on that side of things is important to me. Starting small and creating intensive gardens projects. I've learned right from the start that I can take on more than I should initially, and I need to be careful not to do that and just start small and be careful with overextending myself. And providing redundancy by including multiple systems for important functions. So I'm starting from scratch. I had a clean slate. I've got a house design I'm working on. I did put a garage up this past year, but now I'm moving forward with what's next. I do have some home site design goals. Building an efficient off-grid homestead is important to me. Only using resources available on the property, so that's power and heat, the hydro turbine, solar, and biomass. I'm going to use local resources as much as possible. Timber and stone is what the house will be constructed of. Before I started this course, I had already ordered a steel and concrete garage, so that's already in place, but now I'm trying to transition more into using local materials. And of course, working with existing property contours is key. It's all about the slope, I've realized, with this property. It's 20% slope, pretty consistent all the way down, whether it's access to the property, whether it's taking advantage of the watershed. That's really key for working this property and making it useful. So as far as the last set of goals I have is food production goals, which is key for what I want to look at, following permaculture principles, focusing first on fruit gills, zones 2 and 3. Really, it's a lot of sheet mulching, I think, that will be a key part of my goals initially, and looking at planting fruit trees, which of course will take years to develop, and so I want to make sure that that's my focus before I even start on the house, and then eventually get to some high yield crops, just to make the land productive, and that's really what I'm focused on. And hopefully eventually put in the fish pond. So here's kind of a good way to look at the property to get the big picture. The outline on the edges here. I run out of juice. There we go. This is the property boundary here. This is the driveway that extends another 1,600 feet to Buffalo Road. This is the field area right in here. That's the key area of focus. The barn is constructed now. This is where the house will be going. But you can see I've got a lot to work with here. I've got a stream here that's about 200 gallons per minute, and then a small stream over here that's about 50 gallons per minute. This is really an important part of my project because this is where the hydro turbine comes in. At elevation about 1,300 feet is where the pipe comes off of the stream, comes down, drops about 200 foot in elevation. And when I get to this point here, this is where that hydro turbine goes, and then it discharges back to the stream. Hopefully eventually I'll have an aerated pond down here. The reason I say aerated is I've got a little waterfall in here that will help entrain the air into the system and hopefully be able to support some fish life down here. So this is the existing septic system. There was actually no trailer here, so I did put a septic system in place that I'm planning on reusing. But you can see how the property is shaped and where the water drainage occurs, and this is where I'll be focusing on initially. So there's my little waterfall. So at this point, the house and barn, I plan to construct that between the two watersheds. There'll be high elevation pressurized stream flow that I can use for the hydro turbine. I'm actually going to use part of that for a 2-pipe water supply in the house, as far as minimizing the amount of energy used from the well. Stream water could also be used for irrigation, fire protection, and as I mentioned before, it's that waterfall helps entrain some of the air, so hopefully it'll support a fish pond. I did survey the property. Now this is looking up the hill now, so you can see here, this is the field in front, this is the existing barn and the house. It's funny getting a surveyor involved and asking, okay, what do you think? And this is 20% slope, you think I can squeeze a 35 by 60 barn in here? Oh yeah, no problem. And of course on paper it looks like it actually could work, but once the excavator got out there, things changed quite a bit, and I ended up turning the barn around and basically turning the orientation. So what started as this ended up in this direction here. Working with that slope, it just was too difficult. Otherwise, it'd be sticking out into the air practically, unless I was willing to bring in a lot of fill. So anyway, that's my orientation right now. That's zone 0 and zone 1 as far as my initial focus. I've got prevailing winds in this direction. There's not much I can do being on the slope as far as battling that wind. I get some protection here with the barn, but not much as far as from the northerly winds, but it's just something I'm going to have to work with. So here are my zones, starting with zone 0, zone 1, around the garage and the house construction, and then moving away from that down the slope is zone 2. Zone 3 is this field area out here, and I've got this zone 3 area where hopefully that pond will eventually go, and then zone 4 down here will be for future use, and zone 5 around the edges. But that's kind of the big picture of how I see the property divided up into the different zones. And again, I'll try to just stick with one piece at a time to make this manageable. So there's the barn. It's a start, and like I mentioned, it provides a little bit of a wind block for the north side of the house. It's steel. It's built for being on the side of the hill with pretty heavy-duty construction, but definitely a great idea that DAcres has here that I'm going to try to adopt is the ground gutter system around the edges of it to carry the water away and use it for part of the irrigation system. But this is what I've got so far. So zooming in onto the house site, again, orientation, this is the north side up here, this is the south side, which I plan on putting a greenhouse. And there'll also be a masonry heater on this side of the wall. Unfortunately, I can't orientate the house so I can get that full southerly exposure just because of the slope, but I'm going to try to take advantage of it as much as possible. And with that system, I've integrated some solar hot water and, again, the masonry heater and some other aspects of this. I'm hoping to take advantage of that sunny south side. So I'll get into some details about this. I've twisted the house around now, so now we're looking kind of up the hill at the house, north going this way. With PowerPoint, everything is, at least what I could put together was squares and angles, and so I don't have those nice curving paths that a lot of designs have, but I just said, you know what, this is a place to start as far as just what room I have available, and I'm kind of looking at what might work together to provide a functional site around the house.
Steve, you got like 5 minutes.
Okay. So I've got firewood storage over here. I'm planning on, because of this slope is right here, eventually exploring a root cellar here, and maybe besides the outside root cellar, which have a dirt floor, then looking at a root cellar adjacent to the house, which will be part of the basement. So I'm going to zip through. I have a lot of slides. So this is greenhouse designs I'm looking at. Solar panels that might integrate into part of this design because of that southerly exposure. It's just test pit data that was done when they did the septic system. It's really hard, compacted, stony soil. There's a lot of work to be done to make it workable. I'm going to basically try to get as many chip trucks up there as possible to unload their chips and spread it out, again, zone by zone, trying not to get overwhelmed with doing too much at once. But I know that'll take years to get that land to soften up, the soil. This is the house that will eventually be up there. This is the design of it.
Cool.
That's the inside. That's the fireplace area. The masonry heater will go there. Just a quick picture of that. The house construction will be stone. As we had talked about earlier, the whole slip form stone construction concept is what I plan on doing, and there'll be stones from the site going up little by little to construct the side of the walls of the house. Masonry heater, which is the plan for heating, different than the conventional heater where it takes advantage of the exhaust gases to make it a more efficient system with a hot water loop actually in the unit itself. So I found a company in New York that builds these. So that's the plan there. Just another shot of the masonry heater. And then this is the solar system here as far as the greenhouse and the solar hot water tank, and then some of the details. I won't go through it, just I want to get to the actual plantings here. Again, more house design, that passive solar, taking advantage of it on the side of the house and being able to use the windows to bring hot air through the greenhouse to take advantage of that. And that's just a heat recovery system as well that will go in. Root cellar. Sorry I'm going so fast, but I want to at least get to the plantings and fruit trees and so forth. I put way more slides in here than I knew I'd get through, but I figured I'd just stick it all in. Another shot of just root cellar designs that I'm looking at. So here's the slope. Here's what I'm trying to fill in and create swales there to eventually get some fruit tree guilds in. You can see the slope of the property, and I've got a ridge there that I'm just barely getting sunlight during the winter months, but I've just got enough, so the winter solstice, it just clears that, so that works out. So here's my initial plan, fruit trees and swales in zone 2. That's the layout. Again, it's just a matter of getting some trees in place and starting that planting. I've got some different guilds that I've been looking at and we'll experiment with, but this is really the key part of the design, and that's taking advantage of the slope, putting in some swales, and hopefully getting some good guilds around those fruit trees, which I know is going to be a long process, but that's eventually the plan. Just another shot of zone 3 looking north, and then that portion of the property, again, more trees and more swales in place to catch the water coming down the hill. And more details on the gills, the fish pond. It'll look something like that eventually. And then some design aspects of that as well. This is the last area, the zone 4 layout. I've got a neighbor that has plenty of horse manure, which eventually I'd like to bring some of that over, start creating a pile of chips, and then start from there. Start spreading around. Details of the hydro turbine, the intake for the hydro turbine, what it'll eventually look like, details, and the implementation plan. So, step 1, yeah, I got one thing done. So lots to do, hydro turbine, house excavation, planting trees and shrubs. The house is coming later, a couple years later. So it's a long process, but that's the plan. Am I doing 1 minute? 0?
I already have you so mesmerized.
You got a minute. So this is it, yeah. Oh, you put it up there too? Oh, yeah, this is a quote I really liked, and this is a transition for me. I've been in the suburbs for 20 years. You know, how I interacted with nature was cutting the lawn and raking the leaves. So this is kind of a big step for me, but I'm looking forward to doing it and sharing this experience with my kids, my grandkids, and that's what it's all about for me. So that's it.
Awesome. My name's Sandra, and this is our site at 2 Preston Road in Orange, Vermont. And I'm going to use this little thing for the first time. Uh-oh.
Just sit close.
Cool. So we're going to start by looking at the watershed, so a little bit zoomed out, the state of Vermont. And you can see where the red star is. That's where property is, and the Winooski River watershed flows from Cabot, which is kind of the north of that teal section. Oh, right, I have a pointer. Over here. Flows from here to Lake Champlain. So we're down here. So looking at the Google map image from above, 10.18 acres. It's in the country, and really kind of rolling hillside that faces east toward the Groton State Forest. So you get to see that mountain range over there. It's been a horse pasture for some time, for some decades, and before that it was part of a 200-acre plus farm in the area. It was kind of like the main village area of Orange once upon a time. And it's been sectioned off for many years since then. So we're working on about 10 acres, and something that we found out recently is that Dr. Jarvis, who's one of my kind of inspirations with plant medicine in Vermont, he used to practice in this neighborhood and on this property with the cows and whatnot.
Wow.
So that was really neat to hear. Pretty bare, as you can see. There's not many trees. There's a few trees around the periphery, the fence line. There's one really big maple tree, grandfather maple tree, I'll show you on the drawings. 1,500 feet elevation at the highest point. Super windy. The cistern that was part of the original farm is right there, the well. So that's interesting. It's kind of a neat feature. And we moved here last summer, so we've been there just over a full year. And there's a 14 by 80 single wide that came with the property, so we were able to move right into something, which is really nice. And it's floating. It's not on a slab, so it's breezy underneath and all around. And it's great that the utilities were already installed too. That the driveway and the electric, septic, and the well. And it's a special site to us too. We got married right across the street on the hill, and it just, life brought us back to this neighborhood a few years later. So it's about 8 to 10 minutes to the nearest store in town in either Barrie or Plainfield. It's USDA Zone 3, and the soil, generally speaking, is a well-drained sandy loam. 44.2 latitude, negative 72.42 longitude, and we're frost-free for about 3 months. Which, when I really thought about that, I was like, oh my gosh, I can't believe we had any tomatoes. So here's a survey map, and so still looking at this. This is our closest neighbor structures to us, 5 acres. A lot of our neighbors are elders, and so we're kind of like the new young ones in the neighborhood right now, and it's a pretty quiet neighborhood. Plus it's the country, so it's really quiet. So a little bit about us. Primary land stewards are myself and my husband, Zach. And he's a timber frame builder and a residential eco-construction builder. And he also plays tenor saxophone. So he's not here today because he's in New York. He had to get some saxophone business to do. So he works away from the site most of the time right now. And I've been working in Barrie about 75% of the time. But have been wanting to work from home, from the land more. So it's a goal for 2014 is to work from the land maybe like half-time next year. We have a dog and a cat, and other human traffic on the site are herbal students and clients, so kind of on a weekly basis we have folks coming through now and then. We've got the summer months more company that stays over and visits, and in the winter not as much. And tend to have Sundays with family come over and do gardening and meals and stuff. So, and that's usually, the non-residents that are involved with the site are my parents, my sister, and Zach's father. and we need to have a band meeting to kind of put our heads together and figure out to what degree each person wants to put energy into the site to really help grow food, or whatever the projects may be. The wild animal residents are lots of deer. There's migratory and non-migratory birds, moose, bear, fox, and coyote or coy dogs. I'm not sure if they're exactly coyote, but they're circling closer now that it's getting colder. And we don't have any chickens or livestock right now. We need to build some infrastructure first, but we are intending to at least start with chickens and then look at four-leggeds a little bit down the line. And right now we're maybe producing 10% of our own food and at least 80% of our own medicine, and we'd really like to increase our food sufficiency steadily every year. So the focus area is about 2 acres right there. And this is getting a little bit closer in. There's kind of 3 main garden areas that, so this area is encompassing zone 0, 1, and 2 mostly. So there's our house, the future house that we're hoping to break ground next year with at least the basement. And then this is mostly a veggie garden. There's a green tar, we call it the green tar garden. So we have a green tar statue, with a statue there. And then a little bit further out from the dwellings, we're making a greenhouse and call it the Fukuoka garden, more like a trial area for cover crops and kind of, it's all no-till, but that's particularly no-till. And like growing things, cutting, laying them down, planting seeds and plants into that, and just kind of watching what happens. And then this spot, the highest point of the property is where Zach built a pergola just a couple of weeks after we got there. Started working on that it has a really special presence up there, and we just wanted to sink our energy in a reverent way, but like as a structure onto the land the first summer. So, and then the driveway, this is kind of at a 4-way, it's a village, like 4-way intersection. We're not even a village actually, it's just a 4-way crossing, so our driveway comes up like that. And then this is looking from, standing up at the pergola, looking basically east. You can't see that first garden I mentioned, the green tower garden, it's right on the back side there. And this is the driveway, parking area, and the Fukuoka gardens more like right here. And that's Spruce Mountain right there, and Broughton State Park is out there. So just another view of the kind of central zone. So this was last week. We got some snow. So you can see the greenhouse structure in the distance there. So here's the house, greenhouse, and then like looking out southward toward the pergola. So I'll just kind of summarize the summary.
About 5 minutes.
Oh, okay. I'll really summarize the summary.
Okay.
Well, I think I've actually said a lot of it from looking at the first images. It's a really dry site. It's a really windy site, and what we want to do is learn to work with capturing the water more and working with the strong winds in some way, and also just creating a lot of windbreak and a whole lot of plantings because it's pretty extreme weather up there. So our basic goals articulation for the whole landscape, so this is the general as the whole on the land, with reverence and gratitude for the opportunity to steward this parcel of earth. In our ecological homestead, we are cultivating food security for our family, a wildlife corridor for native species, an herbal learning center for the community, and medicinal crops for my small business, for Herbalists Without Borders, and for our home apothecary. Our site's designed with permaculture, natural farming, and social justice principles. We're working toward bringing the land and our bodies into optimal health through balanced relationship with elements of soil, sun, water, and wind. And I think I'll skip the extended for now. But we have, because there aren't, the building infrastructure is not in place, we're working on that so much. We focused on getting some gardens going, just to have immediate food and herbs and start creating habitat. So we went through the 12 principles and just kind of like Doug assessed this first year, like what have you been up to according to your lifestyle with permaculture, is kind of seeing where we're at with some of those. So that was an interesting exercise to do. Some were kind of felt like a stretch and some felt a little more easy, or but that was helpful to just kind of start seeing how that fits in with what we're doing. So the ANA is somewhere over here. You can look at it if you want to. Was a really good process to go through for us because, this kind of peeling away the layers and then putting them back together helped us see things we couldn't have seen any other way. And it was challenging to just take one layer and actually stick to that layer and not try to keep wanting to put in the other layers at the same time or, draw other topics on there. So, sorry that it's hard to see up here. But from that, we started looking at the bigger design sketch, which is this. And really, it's just too much to, it's giving us the overview. And then next, what we did was started piecing it into pieces. So I'm just going to show you one garden instead of this whole area. But this will remain our Zone 1 house. We're not going to work on a whole lot of the Zone 1 landscaping until the house is getting to be in place. So we're focusing more on the Zone 2. And then we came into the Zone 3 with the pergola, which was not really what we intended, but that's what we arrived at, really, this fall. So we phased out each, the first year, second year, and that was a good exercise to do that took a really long time, actually, to really prioritize. And that's been a real gift of this class, is learning how to do that with this kind of method, having a method for sorting through all this. Phase 3, years 3 to 5. Phase 4 is years 5 through 10. Phase 5 is years 10 to 25. And then when we got to years 25 to 50, it's like, oh yeah, we've got to pass this on to the next generation. Or, mentor the next generation. And we tried thinking of years 100 or 50 to 100 plus. It was a real stumper. So that was kind of interesting to just try to see that far along. This is a picture of a medicinal hedge we planted on the driveway, which I'm not going into in this presentation, but we did a quick overview of the green tower garden, which is mostly vegetables and contoured rows that we started this year. Totally experimental, and it worked out really great. That's my mom in the garden right there, picking beans. And we have a lot of southern exposure, so it's pretty much kind of feels like a free-for-all, although it's dry and windy. So lots of sheet mulching, tons and tons and tons of sheet mulching, trying to keep the soil covered. And lots of brews, mycelial brews and compost brews and herbal tea brews. And so it's kind of hard to get a good photo of this garden on the side here, but you can kind of see the sweet potato and potato contours. But last summer we cover cropped this area, so that's us siding down the oats and the buckwheat. We've got this little tree and shrub nursery going to get our orchard prepared. And then we decided to zoom in onto this garden because it just kept coming up as a space that really could use some attention right now. And it's a really special kind of meditation, prayer, and ceremonial space that we've created. And we realized it's most visible to all our neighbors. And it's super windy, and we just need to create some more privacy and kind of more of a natural fence on the back side of it, on the western side. So this is looking west, toward the west. And so this is what it looks like. This is what we came up with. Biggest species being linden, American linden, and smaller European linden. And the next large being the amalanth, like the Juneberry or shadbush. Some dogo crabapple, I love those flowers. Nanking cherry, few plums. So creating kind of this buffer back here that we'd also grow some of those really tall, pretty grasses like Lauren had. I got inspired by that grass. I'd like to get some of that. So something can fill in sooner and create that fence, and then eventually these guys will fill out, and the smaller ones around, like the pea shrub and currant and goji and gumi and stuff like that. And then have a couple, we're going to work simultaneously around here in zone 2, zone 1 and 2. This is more zone 3, but our idea is to eventually contour down this hill and connect the zones. Plant grapes on the pergola and Trail of Tears pole beans, annual crops on the front parts of the pergola. And then there'll be a contour down here to the south that's high bush cranberry, a polyculture patch. I really love those fruits and bushes. And then do a long-term, this is maybe some cedar down here too that's faster growing, but a Korean pine nut polyculture patch down here. And then a couple of rows, like the Three Sisters corn patch. We wanted to honor the native people of our area too through some heirloom varieties up in this ceremonial space, and the rose hip hedge here. So that's our zoom in for that spot. And really, it truly is just the beginning. It's a new project and lots of ideas, but really breaking it down into these bite-sized or somewhat bite-sized pieces has been really helpful, and there's no way we could have gotten to this like just reading books or, I'm really grateful for this class because it helped me to share with my husband and then eventually with our family how to kind of have a method for this process and work with one another in the elements, hopefully in a good way. So, any questions?
Okay, so my name's Douglas Lam, and this is my permaculture presentation, my design for my house, which is in Hollis, New Hampshire. I want to show you where Hollis, New Hampshire is. Boston's down here, and we're up here in DAcres, and Hollis is here, just next to Nashua. Nice borderline here, right? Good Massachusetts salary. Lots of space in New Hampshire. Yeah, good New Hampshire living on the border. This is what the house looks like. It's a very conventional house. It built in 1996. It's a wooden box with plastic on the outside, basically. Driveway sloping down. And then, so that this is on the side view. So this is showing, this is in April. So the cherry blossom trees out here, we love our cherry blossom tree, and a lot of the hardwoods haven't come out, so you're just seeing this stand of pines here, which I'm going to talk a lot about, because it's one of the central parts of the design, and you get rid of those. This is the chicken enclosure. It moves around, it's on wheels. I move around the grass at the moment, and actually my son's in here running as well. This is the bird's eye view from the north, and the reason I want to show you this is just to give you an idea of the surrounding properties around it. So we're all sort of on 2 or 5 acre blocks of land. Some of my neighbours use a lot of fertiliser on their grass, as you can tell by the level of greenery here. I have a brook running downside here, and then forest off to the back, so it's great. I've really only got sort of people on 1 or 2 sides of me. If we spin around to the south, we get a better view of the boundary of the property. So one of the biggest things that I've taken out of this, one of the biggest things I've realised with taking this course is I actually went out there and mapped the land. Right, I've lived there for 6 years and I've never worked out like where the corners were. And what I realised was that I bought this is 2 acres, but 1 acre of it is basically like wetland. I thought this was the 2 acres, but. Anyway, so that was exciting. So I've never been here because you can't get there because it's like you'd need your gum boots, your wet boots on. So, but most of my conversation's going to be up in this part of the land. So that's the aerial view, and then I'm going to transition to the base map. So I drew this base map and everything I'm going to build on here. So I just want to show you the basic parts. Actually, the labels have moved a little bit with this open office thing, but we'll get around it. But anyway, there's the house and there's the driveway, shed, there's a well here, and the leach field too. So just really quickly, I'm going to go through my layers super quick and get to the A&A summary. So, vegetation in general, there's a lot more here, right? There are a lot more pine trees here. There's a couple of maple trees in the front. Pines, a big oak. You know what? This is going to work because they've all moved.
Sorry.
Yeah. Can we use... I'll go to the PDF version really quickly.
You sure?
Yeah.
Or you can open up the machine.
Because it'll all be off if we... It's okay, we've got PDF. Yeah, that's okay. How do we go to 100%? Yeah, PDF version's better. Yeah, cool. This is good. See now my labels are in the right spot.
Okay.
I'll still be asking what's going on.
Yeah. So the key piece here with the vegetation is I want to point out is north is that way, south is that way. So the house, the stupid thing is the house faces the street. It wasn't designed for solar orientation at all. And then these pine trees down here cast a huge shadow on the house. I'm going to talk about that a lot. Just drainage. So the house was built here, and this land is raised. So I'm guessing they raised it to put the leach field here, and then sort of it slopes away from that point onwards, and then drainage down the driveway. And then because as we get closer to the brook, we actually have some damp or standing water areas down here as well. Access is really need to think hard about access. When you come from the front of the house, there's sort of only two ways to get to the back. You either go between the house and the shed, or you sort of come up this rise and then go out here. And because the leach field's here, I can't drive heavy equipment across there or anything like that, so that's an issue. I want to maintain access to my neighbour here. Good access across there. There's no fence between there. And then I borrow my neighbour's tractor sometimes, and I bring it through back, so I need to maintain that access there. And he has a bonfire too, which is handy for like burning brush and stuff. So I want to maintain that. I have septic. The septic here needs to be emptied once every 2 or 3 years, and then oil point is here. So oil delivery truck comes in and pipes it in. So I need to maintain this area. And then these points here are water availability around the house, and the red arrows are access into and out of the house. Actually, I'll just stop. I did. That red arrow wasn't there in the past. I actually built stairs specifically here because I found the access problem with this house was to get to the backyard, you were always walking around this way to walk around there. So I actually put stairs in there so you could walk across them directly, and it's really opened up that area. But I just want to stop and make the point that, you don't realise, if you put stuff in the wrong place, that adds 1,000, 2,000 steps a year, and it really tires you out if you're constantly having to walk around stuff. It just makes a big deal. Solar radiation is a big deal with this property. So this is the summer picture with solar radiation. I colour-coded it. The orange areas are the areas that get 8 hours of sun a day or more, and the red is sort of 6 hours or more, and everything else is less than 6 hours. So I really don't have that great solar radiation, so it limits where my growing areas are. And then the winter picture, these are the bluer areas where it's 4 hours or less. And so the house is basically in shade for most of the day, so it's cold. And a lot of these areas are cold and the snow never melts. So in the A&A summary, I put here USDA, we're in zone 5B. I didn't put our frost dates on there, I should have. I think our last frost is mid-May and our first frost is late September. But this is sort of our best area for solar exposure. So when we talk about growing things, I want to be in this area. And then this is our worst area for solar exposure. So this is the area we want to improve because we're not getting what we want there. I better hurry up because I realise I'm running out of time. So goals. My goals.
It's been about 5 minutes.
Okay.
We're not going to dock you for the transition.
All right, great. My goals weren't as holistic as yours, Chris. Mine are sort of more bullet pointed. There we go.
What? Are you trying to sabotage him, Steve?
No, I'm trying to bring his color back.
He was doing great until you. What the heck? Jeez.
He's an extra
He's supposed to, What do you want me to do? Distract him?
Just hold this.
Jeez.
Perfect. So my goals for the site, and I've just realised there's a laser pointing here, so I don't have to do this. Food supply. I really want to work on the food supply a lot more. We talked about the heating, so I want to increase my solar passive gain. My access routes, I'm very conscious of those. I'm optimising my space. I want to preserve recreation opportunities, so my son likes riding his bike around the property and like sledding in the winter a little bit. There's enough of a slope there, he can sled on it a little bit. My wife wants some flowers and a pond, but really around relaxation. How do we make this not just about growing vegetables, but sitting out there and relaxing? Water resilience. So one of my weak points in the property at the moment is I have an electric pump that drives the well. So what else can I do for water? So every time we have a power outage, I have no water. And then I need to maintain conventional acceptability of the house and add market value to it. So the design itself is, I'll just walk through the elements. So starting up here, I have a food, forest, swale and contour. So you remember here, this was a slope away. And this is also one of the areas with the best solar exposure. So if I'm going to put any trees, I want to put them here, which means they won't overshadow anything else. So here, this is, the lower things will be in the front and the higher things towards the back. It's great because it's sort of hiding behind this oak tree as well. So if you look from the street, you're not looking directly at it. It sort of is sort of peered behind there. So I think that'll work well. I want to put my compost and my mulch next to where I need it, which would be logical. So, today I have it off in the forest, which is a silly place to put it. It needs to be here where you're going to use it. So most of my compost and mulch is going to come from leaves. So I get a lot of the leaves from all my hardwood trees around, and also grass clippings from my lawn area. Raised beds up here as well, trying to get some of that, use more of that solar exposure. Also down here. And here, I have herbs here already, and it's great. You can just walk out of the house and pick herbs and go straight back into the kitchen, so I want to maintain those. What else? I want a greenhouse here for season extension. I also want to put a tool shed in there. So today I have a silly situation where all my tools are in this shed or in the garage, and I'm constantly carrying them around to do any work. It's just crazy, right? So walking here 1,000 times a day, it's nuts. So I really want to put them here where I'm going to use them. I want to add some rain barrels, so storage off the greenhouse area, and that can irrigate this swale area. I want to reverse the guttering on the house. So all of this water collection here currently goes down some pipe and disappears, which is a total waste to me. I want to turn the pipe and all I need to do is change the drain pipe and then store it here, and then I can trickle feed it down into these areas, which would be great. So that'll help. Maybe with my water, maybe I can plant things up here that don't need such intensive watering, and the things that do I can keep down here where I have the natural trickle feed, so I won't have to hand water anything. I want to put my climbers here on an arbor, sort of arch thing. I think that would be really handy. These pine trees are going, they're disappearing. I'm going to remove those. The chickens and the ducks, they're kind of nice to have on the lawn and wandering everywhere, but that means there's chicken poop everywhere, right? So I've had enough of that. So, and they dig up the garden a lot. So I want to put them here. Use the forest area that I have, and it'd be very easy to fence them in using the trees and sort of put some fencing around it, and then quick access to the house too to grab eggs and things, or to fill them with water. So I want to move them down there.
And is that their house?
Yes, that's their house, and this is like a forage area.
Okay, but there's no water in there, no pond.
Well, no, there isn't. Well, the ducks don't need water for, they don't need a pond. They just need some water to put their bills into.
Right.
So they only need like a sort of 2-3 quarts of water. Mm-hmm. Yep. Mushrooms, I want to grow mushrooms. I love the mushroom thing we did here. I'd love to have some more mushrooms around the place. Mm-hmm. And then maintain this access way. So, this is for the septic and for the oil, and also, we can sled down here in the winter, and this is just a nice slope area, so maintain that. And then finally, solar hot water on the house. I really want to do that when I get rid of these trees. And then more solar passive heating. So I've seen some of those big black panels they have that you can stick on the side of your house, and you can get that hot air into your house. So I want to sort of experiment with that. So that's kind of it. I think I've addressed all my goals there in the design. And then just quickly, I haven't done where I'm going to put what, but this is the vegetable list that we put together, my wife and I, and we're trying to work out, which are the trees and which are the root plants and which are the vine plants and which are the climbers and which are the herbs And so how many we need and how much sunlight, but we'll get there, and then we'll work out where to put them, you know, in the garden. And then I just want to finish on a final note. I just want to, like, there's lots of things I've learned from you guys during the year through our conversations and being here in DAcres, and it's had some life changes for us and the family. So, like, these are just some of the things we've tried to do to get closer to a permaculture lifestyle this year, you know. Like, I moved my compost pile to a sunny spot, so those microbes and things, they're not going to work if they're, like, in the shade, right? They want the warmth. You know, we've changed our diet. We're trying to be sort of more earth conscious with what we eat. We stopped buying air-freighted organic food, so that's it. I'm not buying capsicums and asparagus that are air-freighted from Holland anymore, right? I'm not doing anyone any favours. You know, I'm trying to use as much wood heat this year as possible, so I think we're on about 80-20. So we used to burn like 500 gallons of oil, and this year I bought like 3 cords of wood, so we're trying to move that direction, but we'll see what happens. Steve, your comment, I put a timer on my hot water heater, so I only get hot water when I want it. I don't heat it all night long. And trying to move to, as much as possible, to biodegradable cleaning products, and also DIY. I made DIY toothpaste the other week. It's great, it's good fun. Like DIY shampoo and DIY face wash, and you've got to do it. It's really good. And just trying to buy natural fibres wherever possible. So every time I go to Lowe's or whatever, if I'm buying a tool, I'm not buying the plastic handle tool. I'm buying the wood handle tool. Or, you know, I've stopped buying polyester fabrics. Or I just try to go from. Sandra's really inspired me with the herbal medicine stuff, so trying to use that as much as possible, and nearly finished the course.
Okay, this is my presentation of my 5 acres in South Berwick, Maine. I'm about half an hour from Portsmouth, which is where I work. And I bought this along with my husband. Well, he was my boyfriend when we bought it, but we bought it about 6 years ago. And a little history on the site is the dome, the geodesic dome, was built in 1974 by a nuclear physicist who worked at the Naval Shipyard in Kittery, Maine. And he stole most of the parts to build the dome from the shipyard. So we have a lot of nuclear sub parts throughout the house. We know this because our home inspector had worked at the shipyard and recognized many of the panels and plumbing connections were from subs. So we have since taken some of those out because one of them caught fire once, and we just have upgraded things. I found the site when I was looking for first a cheap piece of property to have horses on. And I stumbled across this when my husband was away for 2 months in Chincoteague, Virginia, and then I told him that we were buying a house. That he could come live with me. And he did. He really liked it when I showed it to him. So this is the footprint of the 5 acres that we own. It's broken off of a 25-acre parcel that extends out this direction. And one of our goals is we hope to someday buy that acreage back and attach it back onto the property. But at this point, the woman who owns it just keeps it for no purpose other than just to hold on to it. It has no road frontage, no access, you can't build on it. That's just a long-term goal we have. Most of the property is wooded, and this is what the dome looks like from the front. It's got a lot of little windows on the north side, and then the south side, this is more to the south, there's large windows. All the windows are plexiglass. The house was only meant to last about 3 years, and then the marriage took 10 years to fall apart, and so the house got left and sold off, and we've been rehabbing it over the last 6 years. And we really haven't done that much because we just didn't know what we wanted to do with the property. Eventually, we have a lot of plans for this area for the property, but eventually over here will be a horse barn. I know horses probably aren't permaculture, but we don't have children, so those are sort of our children. And we do want a draft horse to sort of offset his or her carbon footprint and do some work for us. Over here, this is an old quarry site from probably about the 1700s. It is this beautiful carved out rock that goes down into the ground, and we use that as a fire pit and a burn site now. And then what I didn't include on here is that we have a tree house that someone had planned to live in for a little bit. We gave him permission. And he never really finished it, but I think its footprint is about 15 by 15 up in a big old hemlock tree. So we'll eventually finish that. But there's beautiful rocks that weren't quarried out around the property, and there are also quarry stones that were left. So I have some plans for those things in my Zone 1, which is called the Dome Zone. So my goal for this site is that we become more self-sufficient in our food production. Right now we subscribe, my husband and I subscribe to CSA, and we get all of our meat, milk, dairy, even our grain comes from the CSA. We would like to just do milk and meat from the CSA and grow more of our own vegetables, but all this wooded area is really shading. And when we bought the house, it was completely black. Like, we've had probably about 15 trees removed from the front yard so far. And each time we do that, we just let it sit for about a year and see what we want to do. So we've done quite a bit of land alteration to it. Another goal for our site is to raise chickens and ducks for meat and for eggs. My little experiment last year ended up with 60 Muscovy ducks, which these are two of my breeders, Richard and Brown Mama. Jack, those are the parents of your ducks. I name all my male ducks Richard because then when they become mean, they become Dick and they're easy to kill. And this photo over here is our lady slipper patch. We have a giant lady slipper patch over in this, potentially over in this area. So that's something that in later years we'll keep in mind when we clear property and try and preserve that because it is a really beautiful spot. I love flowers, and right now I have extensive flower beds around my house, and I realize that those could be a little more useful, and so and our soil is basically sand, so getting anything to grow has been a challenge. Having the chickens and ducks has really helped. I'm really surprised at the amount of composted material that we get out of them in just 1 year. And I would like the ducks. They currently live up in this area with the chickens. I would like them to move down towards the stream and be a little more out of the yard. And that way, if I accidentally or intentionally raise 60 ducks again, they're not living in the yard, and also they can use the stream down there for water. Right now they just swim in little kiddie pools. So I've started to investigate the selling of duck meat to restaurants and to private individuals. My biggest issue at this point is just how to produce a good product. They're more difficult to pluck, but they're tasty. We keep them around. So I focused on the area right around the geodesic dome. These 3 trees along here are oak trees that are about 200 years old. This was an old, after it was quarried, it was sheep pasture, or maybe while it was quarried, it was sheep pasture. So we think these probably marked some boundary lines because they're in a straight line And they're very beautiful trees, and we've taken one out that was in between here because it was starting to damage other limbs. And it was a beautiful tree, but we've saved some of the big chunks of that, and we're gonna have that put into our house when we build cabinets and stuff. Right now, this is a really wooded area. We would like, or I would like, to move some of my flowers, my wildflowers and stuff, over to that area. Another possibly debatable whether it's permaculture or not are our beehives. We have those right now down by the stream, which from our bear attack this summer, we found out putting your beehives next to the stream is the worst idea. In a ravine next to a stream is probably the worst idea we could have had, because bears come for water and then they find some bees, and he was really happy to find that, but he's since moved to other hives in the neighborhood. So the bees will come up more towards the property to the house where we can electrify a high voltage fence and hopefully ward off any bears. Out in the front yard here, it does have some shade from a giant oak here, and then from a black birch, I think it is, that we think is pretty. So it does shade it, but I have some daylilies that no one wanted, and I've been spreading them. Right now they're a small patch, but they spread every year, so I'd like those along the drive, because the driveway runs along here. And it's a dirt access road, there's only one other house, so it doesn't get a lot of dust. But spread those, and also propagate some hostas, because those are edible in the spring. And then there's another hosta bed over here where it's real shady. And I've begun to move mint that got into the duck and chicken area. I've begun to move it over to this area to grow for tea and things like that. The shed, I expanded and created a wood shed. It's something that we have needed. Right now we just tarp our wood. And the access to the front of the house is much easier than walking around, which we currently do. So, the dome itself right now is it's called the 3/5 dome. It was a self-custom design, so there are no blueprints. So when we do work on it, it's sort of like, oh, we'll just do that. So I would like to add on a front and then a little back area to create a little more space, because it's only 30 feet across, so it is, and it's got a loft area, but it's tight. Up top, we need to add a cupola for moisture mitigation, and I would like a living roof on that. Berry bushes in the front, and we have a lot of wild blueberries and some raspberries and blackberries that have come in, and just continue to cut back what's there and allow those to spread. Here's a Huviculture bed that I've been working on, and I want that to be an herb garden. Right here next to the chickens and ducks, since they've come to live on the property, there's a little hill there, and they've begun to sort of run that down. So I've begun building a stone wall there to stop the soil erosion. They do get into any plants I plant there, so that'll just be grassed. Expanding, this is all terraced down through here, and there's a wild strawberry patch, so I've begun to spread that. They seem to like a lot of ash for some reason. There was a burning pile there, and so we just throw our ash in that area, and they're happy. Added some roses, some rose hedges for teas and rose hips, but also as a natural barrier so that we don't have to use as many fences. And then some hazelnut or filbert bushes on there that have come in the mail recently. And, the color of the dome right now is gray. I would like it, I colored it gold on here just as a joke from the presentation, but I think it should go to white, because as we've cleared out, it does get really hot in the summer. and we rely on an air conditioner, and I think changing the color and covering. We've learned to cover the windows. We have a silver tarp that covers the giant window in the summer, and that keeps it 20 degrees cooler than it used to. So, and then just changing some of the traffic flow around that just better utilizes the land. So, let's see what else. Oh, some Jerusalem artichokes along the edge, and creating a better traffic flow, a cul-de-sac, a wraparound driveway, so that we don't have to back out. It just seemed easier that way. Is my time up?
Wait, but if you're done, you're done. It's almost done.
Okay. I was speeding up there at the end. Along here, I would like to add, because this is all deck, so the house is about 10 or 15 feet up on concrete pilings. So along here, utilizing that space for climbing vegetables in a hugelkultur bed. I've planted a lot of flowers over the years there, so that soil I've sort of built up and made it a lot better, and I have lots of beautiful flowers. So I think some climbing cucumbers and beans would be happy there, mixed in with some nasturtiums and radishes. And the hollyhocks that are there are good to see. That's my design.
Awesome. Yes.
Ready? All right, so this is the permaculture design for our house, 624 South Stark Highway, Ware, New Hampshire. This first map just gives you a basic location of where it is. All this technology is cool. So we're pretty close to Manchester and Concord. We're about 20 minutes from both. We're in the south part of Ware, which is the second largest town in the state of New Hampshire. So that's that little area. Our house is just under 300,000 square feet. It was originally started. Excuse me?
You said 300,000 square feet.
300,000 square feet, sure. 3,000 square feet.
It's a shopping mall.
Well, it could be a shopping mall. It's just under 300,000 square feet. It's a 5-bedroom, 2.5-bath house that was started in the 1760s to 1780s, depending on who you want to talk to. Our kitchen is the main living area and milk house to the original house that was there. We have a main barn that's 37 by 90, which has been used for poultry, sheep, cows, virtually every kind of farm animal known to man. When you look back at the history, the first settler that lived there actually mostly raised turkeys, and he used to range them all the way up to what is now an acre. Which is a little bit different. So there's a lot of history to the property. One of the big challenges I have with the property, we might get into it a little bit more in a little bit, is that the barn is in severe need of a lot of repair. And it's a real struggle for me how to do that financially. I have $40,000 in that barn right now, and the roof is falling off now. So I have to kind of juggle that. It is a lot of, for some of the things that we want to do, though, I think it's worth looking at saving, and there are a couple of ways we've looked at how we go about doing that. There's also a 30 by 40 carriage barn that needs some sill and roof and floor repair, but the roof is good on that part of the house. And we actually own 2 lots here. So there's a 2-acre lot. Let's see if this is good. Oh, wow, it works. There's actually 2 lots here. So this is about a 2-acre lot that the house sits on. And then there's 12.25 acres, which is pretty much all in current use, which my town does not like at all. There's a big movement in the town of Ware. Everybody on the planning board and the council, they're all builders. So all they see is current use is reduced tax dollars. They haven't gotten out of the 60s and early 70s when we have planning issues beyond. They still think that subdivisions are the best way to create tax income in town. But that's a whole other situation I'm not going to get into today. So our farm is a diverse farm integrating pastured livestock, fruit, perennial and annual vegetable production an environment that will allow people to reconnect with nature. In doing so, we will provide a space and structure to facilitate educational opportunities in permaculture, stormwater management, of agriculture and urban environments, and earth-based spirituality. Our farm will honor the formal uses of the property while striving to incorporate permaculture principles and provide a sustainable income for our family. In recognizing the permaculture design as a living document subject to change, we'll provide a structure for evaluating and updating the farm systems, recognizing progress towards the principles of permaculture, adjust goals, and modify. So there, I've got it all out. I had the advantage of watching my ex, Valerie, go through her plan and now having implemented it for 3 years and watching her struggle with the fact that she has a plan and her house no longer looks anything like that. So I really have tried to incorporate what I do professionally as a stormwater management plan and make this a living document so that it's always available to change. Okay, so it's just one of the things that I looked at when I did it. My partner is looking at going back to school and becoming a UU minister, so no matter how much I try and keep it away from my house, it's just a natural congregating place, and we'll talk about where people congregate a little bit more in a bit. But people are drawn there. Just this past year, we've had the Grange there for a picnic. We've had, a couple of different groups of people. So it's just something that we end up doing at our place, and I like it to provide educational opportunities as part of that. So to go back to the base map for just a minute, and then pull it up on Google Earth. I don't have quite as nice pictures of Google Earth at my place. We're a little bit more out in the country. But this just gives you a little bit of an idea. Start to look at what kind of vegetation types here we have, because we have a couple of distinct areas. This is very wooded, primarily pine hardwood forest. We'll get into that in just a minute. It's very wet down in this area. And I believe if we go to the next one, it's in this view, this is actually the Usgs Topo from our property. This is a 500-foot contour, so that is, we're about 500 feet above sea level. We have two areas that are effectively open water on the property. They're relatively small. Your ducks are going to be living in part of that, as long as I keep it to 6, because that is an issue that I've looked at. We don't want to get so many ducks there that we create a problem. But for my breeders, I think that that's going to become kind of a permanent home for them there. Again, you can see the way they've got some of the, I don't really agree with them quite on the way they've got the vegetation map here, but we did leave the vegetation layer on there. These are 20-foot contours, so, and we'll look at that a little bit more in the, when we get to the soil type. But the back of the property, this little leg that I got on the back of the property, is very steep. So it doesn't offer a lot of potential when we get into that back corner. So when we look at the base map again, I've basically broken it up into 6 different zones, if you will. Zone 0 would be the house and the barn area. Zone 1 is the front of the home here. Zone 2 is this area here, which is all primarily wetland. Zone 3 comes up into this area, which is, this is an old pasture with a variety of old apple trees in it. This is an area that I pretty much, before this class, considered primary use was going to be pasture. But as I've gone through this class and this past summer, all of a sudden my fruit trees, which are very old, have started to come back a little bit. So I've really reconsidered that and reconsidered fruit as something that I wanted to do, because I'm 55. Really planting apple trees didn't make a lot of sense to me because I wasn't going to get a lot out of it. But I've got trees that are really producing again. So I think if we work with some of the area around these trees, that I can bring those back a little bit. So it's really caused me to rethink how I'm going to use that area. I still think that we're going to pasture animals back there. I play around with sheep a little bit this year, and sheep and goats probably are going to be a part of my future. I don't think 14 acres is big enough for me to ever really do anything other than maybe small bovine. So I'm probably not going to. I'm going to be looking elsewhere for my beef, but trading out with some people, some other things. This area here, as I talked about before, is mixed hardwood and softwood, predominantly white pine, sugar maple, oak, black cherry. This is an area that when I get working on this barn again, there's about 50% of the lumber that's gone into that barn already that came off the property or came off of pine that I harvested and put through a sawmill. I got to get back to having a sawmill again. I don't have one right now, but I will before I have trees out here specifically right now. Haven't been cut yet, basically because I'm waiting. Actually, I have trees at Valerie's house that she wanted to cut down. I'm like, no, you're not cutting this down. Soon, but not yet. So this area is the steepest part of the property. It is highly eroded because it was pasture. I've got some pictures from turn of the century where this whole thing was one big flat field with two guys out there with saws cutting grass.
Wow.
I think it's back more to what it should have been, you know, that being all pasture. I mean, it's all of this property in here, both sides of this are highly eroded. We've got rock outcroppings, and right now we're working on a hugelkultur experiment right here, where I used to either chip or burn all my brush when I cut firewood on the property. All that brush is now going onto this slope right here, and I have some straw left over from production of what we're doing at the shop. Is going to go on top of it, and we're going to kind of experiment with that, see how we can bring that back over the next couple of years.
You got 5 minutes left.
I do?
You do.
Holy crap, I'm sorry. All right. I guess I better get moving. All right, wind basically comes from the northwest. The point of these sun calculations, I pulled all of those off, is right here, a tree we're going to look at in just a second. So that gives you an idea of where the sun comes. We have good southern exposure on the house. We also have good southern exposure right in this part of the field, and it's something that I've started thinking about, that I can probably graze there and still do some kind of solar there. So we're going to zip right into focusing on zone 2, which is the back of the house. The entrance is from the back of the house to the backyard is right here. And we'll move into the area. So taking it bit by bit, I have existing blackberries in this area. I planted a new apple tree here. I got a deal on an apple tree. One of the reasons I put one here is I can't get some people in my house to go into the backyard. So I planted an apple tree right next to the barn so that we can get those people to have some apples. We've got some asparagus growing here, and I plan on expanding that asparagus because, as I said earlier, asparagus is the perfect food. So I want to increase that. There's an existing fire brush pit here that as I said, I used to do a lot of burning brush. That may go away, or it may become this may become a winter duck area that I work on turning that into a small pond. There's an existing maple tree here that's in pretty rough shape. Because this is a high traffic area, and that will probably go at some point. We slaughter all of our poultry here right now. We also slaughtered sheep there this year. And that will probably continue until I can get the barn to a spot where we can bring that inside. That isn't something that we would like to do here, is help people with that process. There's a lot of people raising poultry right now that aren't really comfortable with that process, and it is something that people have talked about us helping them out through that process. This is an existing large maple tree. You can see it right there. This is what that whole back slope looks like. We pretty much I've already created this zone of protection around that tree. I'd like to enhance the plant material in there right now. It's pretty much volunteer stuff. There's a lot of multiflora rose in here, which I'm finding multiflora rose actually works pretty well for my chickens as far as providing protection. As soon as they see a hawk, they head for that. And so that's something that I really thought I wanted to get rid of all multi-floor rows, because you know how I feel about invasives, but I'm beginning to think that maybe that has a place in my backyard. The rest of this backyard, you can see that whole area is sloped there. I want to terrace those beds with the rock from behind it and use that for a lot of my more of my perennials. A lot of fruit production there, some sunchokes and some some things, perennial vegetable products. Although honestly, with my family right now, other than Callie and I, it's a stretch getting them to step into the world of eating outside of the norm. So we're working on that. I have some raised beds along the front part of that. Let me go back here for just a second. We are looking at putting a greenhouse right in this area, 20 by 40, something similar to what you've got here, where I can do some winter chicken or duck housing, as well as a greenhouse. This is the first spot to lose snow in the winter. And the last place to get it, in the spring it's the first place that snow goes, and it's really the last place that it starts to congregate in the fall. So I think that that's my best spot right now for that. We're doing vegetable production along this fence now, so let's go forward. So I've created some beds. I've used a lot of old logs that we had. Like I said, I've been an arborist for a long time. I still have quite a bit of that stuff laying around that we use, and logs that aren't going to be good for timber go into that. I've mixed a lot of structures with stone. This is a bed that I created in the front last year over a big old maple stump. So, okay. Then we're going to use that area in between for rotational grazing. This is my latest invention, or not really an invention. I've thrown a couple of things together. This is one's made of PVC, 2 inch and 3/4, and we're utilizing that with the. I want to use these structures for two purposes. I want to use them for chickens or ducks. You can see ducks right here. Those came from your house. And I want to experiment with these. I think 10 by 20 is too big for what I want to do, but I'd like to put a lot of my chickens in these in the springtime, let them hatch out their own young, and then pull them. And I think I can get enough chicken production out of 4 to 8 hens that way to supply our family, not doing incubation and all of that. We're going to start experimenting. I've read some articles on that. We're going to try that this year. And we're going to do this in this back area, which was...
You got about a minute.
I have a minute?
Yeah.
Okay, I'm almost done. This area is all from my horse life. This was an arena that I'm transitioning back into, so it's got really poor soils underneath. We're going to use the chickens, and we're going to do some plantings to do that. Jumping in, this is the backyard. We have raised beds in the backyard, similar to what we had before. We're going to put an outdoor kitchen and a fire pit here, because inside the house right here, this is the area that people congregate in our house. I've tried pushing them out into other areas of the house. They all go back there. Our kitchen, living area, we have a dining room, we have a living room. Nobody goes there. They all end up in our kitchen. So I've stopped fighting it. I'd just like to extend that out into the outside. Callie really wants this clothesline, which I promised her this spring. I haven't gotten to her yet. Wood production we have a wood kitchen stove inside here. So all of our wood goes right there. I still need to maintain an access to get a tractor in and out of there. And, nice. And that's how fast I can get through it. This
is that your sock, Jack?
What's that? That's a wattle, actually. This is straw wattle. This is one I do a lot of presentations every year. We do 3 stormwater clinics in New Hampshire every year. This is one of them about 4 years ago. We did it at a petting zoo, and I actually got one where I was eating the hay bale before, because I hate hay bales as an erosion control tool. So he's proven what hay bales are good for.
Okay.
But there he's scratching his head wondering what this raw wattle is. He was great. I got pictures of him. I've used in presentations all over. All right, go ahead, shoot, fire away.